Good day, everyone. Today, we're entering the beating heart of research design, conceptualization, the disciplined act of saying with precision what we actually mean. By the end, you'll be able to take a hazy, attractive idea and turn it into a well designed, researchable concept that other scholars can recognize, critique, and build upon. This lesson pairs with Lesson 10 on operationalization and Lesson 12 on validity and reliability. Think of them as a three-link chain. Conceptualize, operationalize, verify. Break one link and the whole study wobbles. Let's begin with a story that exposes why this is so crucial. The story of Anna. Meet Anna. She proposes to study resilience among healthcare workers. Her advisor returns the draft with a single comment. What do you mean by resilience? Anna thought it was obvious, bouncing back, but in psychology, resilience can mean emotional regulation. In nursing, retention after burnout. In sociology, social support networks. Same word, multiple worlds. If Anna doesn't define it, her readers, her participants, and reviewers will each imagine a different thing. So, what is conceptualization? Conceptualization is the process of crafting clear, explicit conceptual definitions for the key ideas in your study. It answers four hidden questions. What is this thing? What is not this thing? Which dimensions does it include? And how does the field already define it? Without this, you risk measuring fog. With it, you give your research a spine. So let's move from vague to precise. Watch how ambiguous terms become researchable. When we talk about success, we that's a very broad term. We need to look at it in terms of academic success. But when we start looking at academic success, how do we define academic success? Then we can look at it in terms of GPA, standardized test scores, or course pass rates. The same is true for poverty. What do we mean by poverty? We can refer to household poverty. But more specifically, what do we mean by household poverty? Then we can look at income below government threshold or food insecurity index. Or the same is true for stress. What do we mean by stress? We can look at it in terms of psychological stress or score on the perceived stress scale. So each step reduces ambiguity, increases comparability, and prepares you for measurement. So, why does this matter beyond neatness? why does conceptualization or clear conceptualization matters? Three reasons. First, internal clarity. You can only design instruments and analyze concepts that you can clearly define, which basically means if you can't define it, you can't actually measure it. Second, external credibility. Here, readers can evaluate whether you studied what you claimed or whether you were able to measure what you claimed. Third, cumulative science. Others can replicate, compare, or even synthesize your work. So, how do we actually do it? How do we basically conceptualize? Here we speak of the narrowing process. Narrowing process. Conceptualization requires moving from abstract to the specific through deliberate refinements. And let's look at that. Uh, Conceptualization is a funnel from broad to focused to defined. A good example is social media engagement. You ask, is engagement behavioral? Are you referring to posts, comments? Is it cognitive? Are you emphasizing attention, involvement? Or is it affective? Are we looking at enjoyment, identification, or which domain fits your theory and purpose? You choose dimensions, write a definition, and bracket what's out of scope. Use these prompts when drafting a definition. And what are these prompts that we have to pay attention to? First, scope. What is inside or outside these concepts? Second, dimension. What parts make it up? Third, field usage. How do key papers define it? Where do they disagree? Fourth, observability. Can it fe- can can its features be seen, elicited, or even recorded? So let's define two common concepts you will meet in the process, no? So let's look at this one. First, we will conceptualize two constructs. How does social support affect student well-being? If we leave those as buzzwords, the study simply collapses. If we define them well, we can build everything else. First, let's begin at social support. Social support can mean many things: resources, emotional, informational, and practical, circulating through valued relationships that help individuals cope and function. Dimensions of these can vary depending on what you need. can mean emotional, empathy, care, validation, informational, advice, guidance, instrumental, tangible help, and belonging or integration, inclusion in a network, or group identity. Exclusions can be anonymous likes that we do not count unless we're studying perceived support from online ties. So when you look at these conceptualization of social support, you come to have an idea what the author means by social support. Now let's move to the second one, well-being. Student well-being is a multidimensional state including life satisfaction, mental health, and effective academic functioning. Possible dimensions of this one can include hedonic, feeling good, positive effect, life satisfaction, eudaimonic, functioning well, flourishing, meaning, having autonomy, having competence, and academic functioning, concentration, persistence, academic self-efficacy. Note, you need to pick a coherent subset tied to your theory and purpose, lump in a nutshell in your definition. What happens when you make these explicit? Clarity unlocks method. With explicit definitions, you can select instruments, questions, or observations that match the concept. It also protects you from reviewer pushback. You can show where your definition sits in the literature and why you choose it. There are, however, certain common pitfalls, and you need to beware of common traps when we look at this one. And what are these common traps? No, I think there are, yes. So there are 5 common traps, common pitfalls that we need to be careful of. One, assumed obviousness. To presume that everyone knows what motivation is an assumed obviousness. Or circularity, defining motivation as level of motivation. That's circular. Or conflation, mixing well-being with achievement without justification. Or over abstraction, where there's no path to observable features. Or what we call the kitchen sink, where every dimension ever named, or we go to the level where it is already unmanageable. So how do you write a strong definition? How do we write a strong definition? Scan 5 to 10 seminal and recent sources. Check their definitions. Note convergences, note tensions. Then, write a crisp definition of 2 to 4 sentences. List included dimensions with rationale. State at least one exclusion to show boundary control. Then, test with a peer. Can they paraphrase it accurately? The lesson in one line. What do we mean by the lesson in one line? There. The key takeaway is that clarity is kindness. Conceptualization, whether we like it or not, is intellectual hospitality, inviting others to see exactly what you mean so they can meaningfully respond. Let's make this one practical. Your task for lesson 10 is this: conceptualization. Choose one key concept from your study. Write your conceptual definition, which means in your own words and in 2 to 4 sentences. Add one scholarly definition where you will cite your source, and list dimensions you include and one exclusion, one dimension you exclude. Then briefly explain uh, why this dimension fits your study. Once you know what you mean, the next question is how you'll see it in the real world. That's operationalization. Operationalization is how will you measure it? Operationalization is translating your well-defined concept into indicators that can be observed, asked, coded, or scored. Back to Anna. Anna defined resilience as the capacity to recover from work stress through adaptive regulation and resource use. Her advisor now asks her, how will you know resilience when you see it? Operationalization turns resilience into observable signals, survey items, behaviors, or narrative evidence that count as evidence for your concept. Core idea first. Operationalization specifies how a concept will be measured or recognized. It ties each dimension of your definition to one or more indicators. Those indicators become variables in the quantitative realm, codes or themes in the qualitative realm, and hybrid composites in the mixed media method. And that's something we need to pay attention to. Let's map the move from concept to indicator. Concept, dimension, indicator. Example, student well-being. The concept is well-being. The dimension is academic functioning. The indicators can be a self-reported concentration, which is a scale of 1 to 4. We do not see we do not see for we don't actually see 5 scales right now. We normally see only 1 to 4 scales most of the time. Number of completed assignments on time. Uh, Minutes of sustained study per session. Each indicator is a window into the construct. And that's something we need to pay attention to. A word about levels of measurement. There are multiple approaches to operationalization, and we need to pay attention at these. Okay? So we've looked at already what indicators are, no? And we need to pay attention at those. So indicators and variables, sorry. Uh let's stay here first. So for example, the concept idea is stress. The operational definition is on in terms of the score on the perceived stress scale. Or here you see the concept is academic engagement. And then in the examples, it's average, attendance rate, and the like. So let's look at multiple approaches to operationalization. Let's look at this one. When we say that there are multiple, when we say that there are multiple approaches, then we need to pay attention at what do we mean by those multiple approaches? Okay? Uh, me- so multiple approaches to operationalization. When we say that there are multiple approaches to oh wait, nasaan ako? So most concepts can be operationalized in many ways, and your choice depends on your research design, the available resources, and what aspects of the concept matters most to your research question. A concept like well-being could be measured through standardized surveys, physiological indicators, behavioral observations, or even interview responses. Each approaches captures something different. So let's look at indicators and variables. What do we mean by indicators and variables at this point? Okay. Um, nasaan ako? Sorry. So, let's look at that one. So, what are indicators? Indicators are the specific signs or manifestation that represent your concept. They are the observable evidence of something very abstract. For instance, if you're measuring well-being, the indicators might include, as we said, the self-reported happiness or survey item, frequency of positive emotions, sleep quality ratings, and social connection measures. These are very important to pay attention to. So, how do we basically look at that? So, here you see the concept, resilience, for example. You identify the indicators, the observable signs of resilience. You try to turn them into variables, the measurable elements in your study, and then you collect the data. Remember, each indicator becomes a variable in quantitative studies, or each indicator become a theme or a code in qualitative research. And that's how they happen. Now, what are the marks of a strong set of indicators? Uh, we can look at four marks. Relevance. Does this indicator truly reflect your concept? Or would it change if the concept changed? Feasibility. Can you actually measure this indicator with your resources and access? Precision. Does this indicator capture meaningful variations in the concept? And multiple indicators. Using several indicators provides a more complete picture of complex concepts. So let's go back to Anna, no? Let's bring this to life with Anna's study on resilience. If Anna chooses a quantitative approach, she might use a standardized scale like the Davidson Resilience Scale. She could even adapt it, adding three items specific to hospital work stress. If she takes a qualitative path, she'll ask participants to tell stories, for example. She'll ask participants to tell stories, describe a time when you face a major challenge at work, and how you recovered. Her coding would then look for themes like coping, reframing, seeking help, optimism. And if she goes mixed method, she could use the scale for breadth and for interviews for depth, showing both numbers and narratives. Operationalization is powerful, but it is also fragile. So let's talk about how to protect it from what we call uh, operational bias. So when we look at concepts of operational bias, we need to pay attention at, sorry, let's do this first. So what are design-specific forms of operationalization? Survey, where we use existing or validated scales to carefully construct new items with clear response options. That's what you write your questionnaire. Interviews, where you develop interview protocols with open-ended questions that elicit rich descriptions. Observations, where you create structured observation protocols specifying what behaviors count as indicators. Or experiments, where you define precise manipulations and dependent variable measurements. So, without clear operationalization, your concept remains to be poetic but not scientific. Operationalization ensures your study can be replicated, critiqued, improved, and compared with other research. It transforms eloquent ideas into empirical evidence. This discipline translation is what separates rigorous research from philosophical speculation. Both valuable, but fundamentally different enterprises. This is your task for lesson 10. Start with your concept. Use the same word that you used in lesson 10. So lesson 11 na pala tayo. That you've already conceptualized. Write your operational definition. Explain specifically how you'll measure or observe this concept in your research. List two indicators or variables. Identify specific observable signs that represent your concept. And justify your choices. Explain why these indicators best capture your concept for your research purposes. You will submit these uh, with lesson 10 in one submission alone. Now, part of the operationalization process is the question of validity and reliability. Welcome to lesson 12. You've defined your concept and designed your measurement. Now the question is, can you trust it? Measurement measurement is like photography. A blurred photo might still show the subject, but details are lost. A distorted lens changes what's captured. Validity and reliability sharpen that image. Let's go back to Anna's story one last time. Anna ran her resilience survey. Some items moved together, others didn't. The data looked messy. Her advisor sighed and said, check your validity and reliability. Anna learned that consistency and accuracy are separate battles. A tool can be reliable, giving the same result again and again, yet still invalid, measuring the wrong thing. Our goal is both that the instrument is consistent and the instrument is correct. So let's understand validity first. Are you measuring what you think? Content, construct, and criterion validity. So, validity refers to the accuracy of your measurement, whether your instrument actually captures the concept you intend to study. A valid measure truly represents the theoretical constructs it claims to measure. For example, if you create a stress scale, but it actually measures general anxiety or depression instead, your measure lacks validity. The scale might be consistent, reliable, but it's not measuring what you claim it measures. There are three types of validity, as we said: content validity, construct validity, and criterion validity. Does your instrument cover all relevant aspects of the concept? Have you included items representing each dimension? Construct validity. Does your measure truly represent the theoretical idea? Does it behave as theory predicts? Or criterion validity. Does your measure correlate appropriately with related measures? Does it predict relevant outcomes? For instance, if your stress scale correlates positively with blood pressure measurements, cortisol levels, and established anxiety inventories, that provides evidence of validity. If it correlates with unrelated concepts like height or favorite color, that suggests a lot of problems. So we need to pay attention. So validity is about evidence, not opinion. You gather clues from patterns, logic, or even expert review. Next, reliability, the other half of trust. Reliability means or asks, are the results consistent? Are the results consistent? So reliability means your instrument works the same way every time it's used. There are three common checks here: internal consistency. Do the items hold together? And therefore, we look at Cronbach's alpha or split half tests. Or we can do a test and retest, which means if measured twice under similar situation, do you get similar results? Or inter-rater reliability, when different observers record stuff, do they agree? Those are the four types of reliability, internal, test and retest, inter-rater, and parallel, no? Different versions yield similar results. So if your tool is consistent, your conclusions will be consistent too. Reliability therefore gives your data stability. In qualitative research, we use different terms, but the spirit is the same. Is the same. So, validity, reliability, and research quality. So, measurement is the bridge between theory and truth. Validity ensures that bridge leads to the right place. Reliability ensures it doesn't collapse along the way. And this is your final task in this week, for this week. Lesson 10, Lesson 11, and Lesson 12. Use your operational concept. Return to the concept you operationalize in lessons. Describe validity checks. Explain how you would assess content, construct, and criterion validity. Describe reliability checks. Explain how you would assess, test, retest, internal consistency or inter-rater reliability, and explain the importance. Write one paragraph on why these checks matter specifically for your study. Again, you are going to submit lesson 10, 11, and 12 in one Canvas submission. We need to pay attention at the different perspectives precisely because this will allow us to clarify, one, have we designed our concepts properly? Two, do my measurements match my definitions? And three, can others trust our findings? If you can answer all three, you're not just writing a paper, you're doing science. One last thought before we end. Research is not about data collection alone. It's about meaning making. And meaning begins with clarity. Define carefully, measure wisely, test rigorously. That's the craft of a graduate researcher. Thank you, everyone. Please review this lecture and start drafting your conceptual, operational, and validity plans. All submissions are due in a week's time for lesson 10 to 12 on Canvas. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great day, everyone.